Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here.
And welcome to another episode of the IT Business Podcast, the show for IT professionals and managed service providers where we help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. Here we talk about here's what works as much as we can. But on this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on what the basics that most providers claim to have locked down. Cyber hygiene, patching, pen testing. So let's tune in here, folks, and stick around to see if you're ready to turn those from checkboxes into real revenue and real protection. My guest today, Frank Raimondi from IGI Cybersecurity. You know them more as Nodeware, even though they shouldn't be called Nodeware. He is the VP of Channel Alliances and Partnerships. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Uncle Marv. It's a pleasure to be here and look forward to our discussion today.
Well, thank you very much. Now, normally I'd have a vendor on when we have a big major announcement. The last announcement you guys had in February wasn't one that really hit home with a lot of MSPs. The PCI DSS version 4.0 compliant authenticated vulnerability standing for multi-location retailers. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Well, and that was actually from a PCI standpoint, that was more kind of an industry play, which we support. We're not a particular PCI scanning engine or not authorized in that standpoint, but we do what needs to be done in that regard. And actually, we did launch just last week, depending when this airs, might have been last month, but we released a version for patching third-party applications in addition to our OS patching. We'll talk about that when we get into it, but kind of a preview version to get that up and rolling. So we're excited about what that means.
All right, and that's in addition to the patch management that you added last June. So very nice there. Okay, so tonight we decided we would have a topic based on cyber hygiene. And what does that really mean for everybody? So I guess let me ask you, because what's bouncing around in your head when it comes to what I mentioned at the top, what MSPs claim to be doing versus what we really should be doing?
You know, when I was thinking through this, the biggest thing that sort of comes to mind with that is that they're not covering the full enterprise. Right. Or at least they're not covering the full range of vulnerable, exploitable surfaces, let's call it. Right. So one of the things that I think plays into the cyber hygiene world, or some people really call it kind of left of boom, right? Kind of what you do before, there's lots of tools that help you once you find something and discover an issue. But left of boom, let's call it cyber hygiene combined. It's that realm of things. One of the biggest shortfalls that we see is that the MSPs just don't know what's really on their customer's network, right? There's the endpoint because you maybe have an agent on them or you're managing them through your RMM. But to really understand let's call it the exploitable potential within an environment, you need to know everything that's in that environment. And so that's, again, just to be a call out a feature, right? Our tool within Nodeware is to really identify every IP address in that environment, because literally every IP address is a attackable version. Now, there's obviously different levels of accessibility and all that, but what you need to protect, you need to know. You need to know is there.
Yeah.
So that really is kind of our biggest mantra of what MSPs are not doing. And that also then kind of when we've seen customers roll out vulnerability management, whether it's ours or any other tool, they maybe only roll it out for a subset of their customers, right? They're not sort of really embracing this across their customer set. And part of that's a cost reason, just maybe they haven't gotten the customer to agree to, maybe there's a bit of an uplift. or maybe they're set in their contract and what they're delivering and they don't want to go beyond that. But realistically, I see it as an opportunity to do a lot more, right? Because once you know what's on that environment, you know how bad those systems might be or how risky they might be. That's an opportunity for another statement of work beyond your day-to-day managed services, right? Maybe it's lift and replace some old endpoints or replace some old printers or, an old server that's sitting back there that's been running for 10 years and hasn't been patched in 4. Okay, yeah, it's working. It's safe, quote unquote, but there's just that identity, that knowing of really what's there and how risky what is there is.
So,
Sorry.
So part of what you said, I get, and I looked at it as the basic first level of network monitoring, meaning, a lot of people years ago used to be able to throw on a little software scanner tool, Landsweeper or whatever, and you just, scan for pingable IP addresses to know what's actually there. But that didn't give much. So then there are tools like Avik and Domos that actually will sit on the network and tell you every device that pops up. And I love it because full disclosure, folks, I use Domos. I've had Avik on the show, and full disclosure, I have Nodeware. And one of the things that happens is, when a customer, swaps out a printer, the copy guy shows up and does something, or somebody brings a new device and plugs it into the network, I get notification. And it was easy after the fact to sell that to clients, whereas before they wouldn't have thought about it because they're like, well, why do we need that service? And I tell them, well, here's the whole idea. If somebody comes into your network and plugs something in that shouldn't be there, don't you want to know about it? And they're like, well, of course, yes. Okay, well, that's what the service does. And then, a service like Nodeware on top of that, and then try to do a little bit of checking to see, okay, is that a good device? Is it patched? Is it up to date? That sort of thing. So that's kind of where I see that. And that's that whole left of boom that at least I've done some of it. I can't say I've done it all because I'm human like the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, one of the pieces, and this is kind of where our new application patching kind of comes in handy, is, a lot of people do, and let's say it's a monthly software patch, right? Maybe it's an Adobe push or it's Chrome, or, Chrome comes up all the time. But those are good from version, 3.1.5 to 3.1.7, right? But what we're focused on is looking for the 3.1.7 that has, that's patching for, or that's picking up a vulnerability that they found on 3.1.2, right? So it's not necessarily just a rev change, but it's an identified vulnerability in the software that could be, middle of the month between your normal patching or quarterly, however often you might be doing it. So in addition, obviously, to the OS, version issues and patching and critical vulnerabilities that come out of Microsoft and others, there is the software, the third-party application software that does have vulnerabilities. We don't think about them much, right? Because you think, oh, we're patching it all the time, it's going to catch up to it. Well, there's a lot of crap that falls in between those regularly scheduled patches that is a bit more vulnerable that you need to be thinking about differently.
Yeah. So you kind of started off talking about where MSPs fall short a lot of times. Are there things that we fall short of that are just low-hanging fruit? And I'm thinking in the instance of a lot of us turn off a lot of noisy environments, because we just don't want all the alerts of every single thing. But are there things like that you think we are just completely missing the mark on, either because we're lazy or don't think we need to do it, or, any other reason that falls into that category?
Yes, in a way. So again, one of the things that we see with a lot of MSPs have done used Nodeware for one or two customers specifically, right? And they say, oh, you know what, Prop has some great work, but we're afraid to bring it out to the rest of them because it's going to produce so much extra work, or we're going to find things that we thought we were doing that maybe we weren't, or we weren't keeping up on. So I'd rather not know. And that just is so upsetting in so many ways that, the ostrich head in the sand is more convenient. But I think one of the tools we enable is like a 7-day trial, right? Just run it on a customer site. You don't even have to tell them necessarily that you're doing an inventory, you're doing an initial vulnerability scan. And, you could use that to produce an executive summary or produce some data that shows, we found 62 devices on your network. 10 of them have critical KEVs, known exploited vulnerabilities on them that are just sitting there waiting to be exploited. And so that kind of proactive, hey, Mr. Customer, we're looking out for you. We're covering up to here, right? And we're doing this for you. But, if you want, we found these other things on your network that we don't know how they got there. We're not managing them on their day-to-day basis. But these other 10 other devices that are critical that we would like to propose, a statement of work that replaces, updates, and then add them to your normal managed services contract, perhaps. So I think there's that sort of upside that, it's a value add statement in the first place, right? It didn't cost you anything to run a trial for, 3-4 days, up to 7 days, see what they've got, and then propose and work with them to help them understand, it's your call, right? Your risk reward here if you don't want to pay for it, but at least we've told you what's in the environment, and we can help you with that. Right.
Okay, let me throw a hypothetical at you, because we as MSPs are always trying to do that upsell. We're always trying to say, hey, we can do this for you. We can have this. Things like, network monitoring, patching, these are basic things, but we still keep missing the mark. We still have customers that things happen. We are seeing still almost on the daily, somebody's gotten hit with a ransomware, somebody's gotten hit with a vulnerability. Things are not patched and things like that. Where do you think we might be falling short? I mean, is it the tools? Is it our processes? Or is it us as people?
It's probably kind of a bit of all the above, and just depends on the environment. But ultimately, right, we're all, I think 98% of the MSPs I've found and talked with are, people first, right? They're people first. They're smaller businesses. They want to be friends and be helpful to their customers. So there's a hesitancy I see a lot to offer additional value because in their mind, automatically it's additional cost to them before they can get it back from the customer. But I think in a way, there kind of has to be a little bit of more of a, this is bad wording, but a bit of more of a harshness to the customer, because ultimately, right, if you were to say, Mr. Customer, we found these things and we suggest you improve them, and they sign off saying, yeah, okay, we're going to decline this, they're still going to come after you, right? If something happens that is proven to be, their own fault, right? But they're still going to come to you first. And so, ultimately you're protecting yourself by adding those other values, right? So I think if you look at it from, again, how can I be more value? How can I be more, clear on what I'm offering? Because, again, our customers, your MSP customers are not technical, right? They do their business well, and, they're trusting you to be their IT provider. But so anything beyond the basics is foreign language to them, right? So I think, a big part of what might help here is to put these terms, or to put these, instances into, practical things they're used to. So we've talked about sort of vulnerability management and penetration testing. And one of the examples that I use a lot that really hits home is vulnerability management is like going to your doctor once a year, right? You start with a visit. They give you, hey, we found these 5 things. Your heart's, out of pace. Your cholesterol's high. Your whatever, right? All the normal visuals, your these things that need to be worked on, right? You need to exercise more, eat less, blah, 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 drink less. So you get on that program, right? You do identify those things, you work through that. That's where vulnerability management is, kind of that continuous improvement. The penetration test is, okay, let's get you on the treadmill, right? Let's see if those things you've been doing are being effective, are protecting you against other outside issues, outside attacks, et cetera. So that if you could bring it to them, to your customer, say, we want to be able to prescribe and improve your health over the next 6 months by doing these things. We're going to look on a daily basis. We're going to be looking for vulnerabilities. We're going to, on a daily basis, going to remediate the most critical ones. And on a regular basis, we're going to, prioritize down from there. But we're going to help you get to those levels that we think when that next test comes up, you're going to be healthy and you're going to be able to survive that test. And that test is, again, you put it back to the bad hackers or maybe AI, and the AI forces is spooking everybody out. But the more you're fundamentally strong and the more you're fundamentally healthy, and this comes back to our cyber hygiene starting point, right? It's a hygiene issue. It's a health issue of your network. If you put it in their terms, I think it becomes a lot more. Oh, okay. So we're fighting our cholesterol with this statin drug, right? We're improving our flexibility with this exercise and yoga program, right? Oh, we're not doing this other thing. Well, maybe we should do that because I see now where it explains it. Well, I'll ask you, does that make sense to you? I mean, does that appeal?
Well, it makes sense. And I was going to actually take it a step further, since you brought up the health analogy and the doctors. I believe that we are getting closer to a time where we're going to be held responsible, just like doctors are, when it comes to this idea of duty of care or responsibility that, once we take over a customer's network, we're responsible for it. And so, as doctors, if they do an examination and they find something wrong, they have an obligation to, one, let you know about it, and to two,
to try to figure it out.
And then to try to figure it out and fix it. And that's, I think, where we're headed with the way that cybersecurity, hacking, AI is going to be a part of that. We're going to be responsible to the degree that we have to, be able to, not just act like we're left of boom to see what's there, but we need to let the customers know that it's there and give them remedies to fix it.
Yep. No, absolutely not. When you were talking through that, that's another element that I hadn't thought through, because if you fear of, I've got a friend who had a, condition. It was nothing serious. Didn't seem like it was serious. And the doctor, oh, you'll be fine. Let's just watch it for a little bit. Well, of course, it developed into something more serious and required a surgery later. And it could have been prevented if they had, been a little bit more proactive back at that front part. Right. And, so it absolutely applies here. And again, I think it ultimately comes down to a clear discussion with your customer, right? What you're currently doing, what you're not currently doing, and why you think these other things are going to help them in their health and keep them better prepared and better protected.
Yeah. So you kind of almost answered this question, and I'm going to ask it anyway to see if you're going to phrase it any differently than what you said. But if you had to give, IT professionals a little bit of tough love when it comes to security, what would you say?
I say, don't be afraid to. Well, one, you got to know, right? You can't keep your head buried in the sand, right? Don't be afraid to find out what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, right, in your current and customer environments. Think about the number of new customers you brought in over the last couple of years. What was the one main reason they came to you, right? It's because they weren't satisfied with their existing provider, right? Or maybe it's a big enough business now they actually need somebody, but that's, I don't know, probably 3 out of 4 times, right? It's because they're not currently satisfied with their old provider. They didn't treat them right, or they weren't doing something well, or they found out they weren't doing something. So think about, sort of criticize yourself, right, about your service levels, right? And think about what else you could do to them, or not do to them, sorry, do for them.
I can mess with your network today.
Well, let's get devious. No, they think we do. Well, then if they don't pay their bills, you might overthink about that. That's a different.
Hey, I've had that happen. I had somebody who whose internet got turned off, and they thought it was me. And I'm like, I have nothing to do with your internet.
But you're the IT guy, right? Right. You know everything about your IT, so you're responsible. So that's a perfect, sort of, base case of where I think MSPs aren't as, it's not honest and forthright, but it's taking a true look at their business, at their deliverables, and being more honest with your customers about, hey, if you're not doing this, then I don't want to be your provider. Right. I mean, I've heard more and more MSPs doing that, where they're firing their clients because they don't want to take that next step. They don't want to be more protected. And when that happens, right, who's the first call when they get hit? Right. And it's, you clearly stated what you were doing and what you weren't doing. But if they get exploited, then it's all you.
So you say that, and I hear that. I mean, a lot of MSPs are talking big, but when it comes down to it, if it's a big customer and that's a big check that they're going to lose every month, a lot of MSPs are going to say, you know what, I will work with you. And it's funny because I talk about, I've got one client that we're on the bubble with that situation. It's a nice check each month, but they've got 3 out of 6 servers where they've got open RDP to the internet. It's a co-managed office, so it's not like I'm 100% responsible.
Yeah.
But I know that when the buck, has to really stop somewhere, it bypasses their internal junior and comes to me. So I did send out an email. I sent it out last week, actually, that we need to get this resolved by June 30. I hope we do get it done.
Well, so let me ask you, in your peer discussions and talking with other MSPs, do you think there's a willingness to get that, level of honesty and sort of clarity with the customer, or is there still that hesitation we were talking about before?
I think it depends on the customer. I think it really depends on, one, if you like them, 2, are they a big enough check that you'd miss it?
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the big things. Now, I do have a story that I can lean back on, because in 2018, I did fire my largest customer at the time. And it was for a lot less reasons than, open RDP ports and security and stuff. It was just the relationship. It was time to end it. But they didn't want to end it. I just said it had to end. That's not an easy conversation. So again, it does depend on the customer. It depends on the size. It depends on a lot of factors. But I think that if it were a new customer or prospect, it's a lot easier to say no on the front end,
right,
than it is for a customer if you've had them, 10 years, and we didn't have to deal with these issues 10 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, yeah, I think so. The tough love, I guess, with a new customer would be a slightly different perspective. And I think what I've seen is a lot of MSPs, whether they're talking about it or doing it, that they're being much more clear on their the master service agreement and or their statement of works, and what they are covering and what they're not covering. And I think they've gotten better at including the legalese that says, we are doing this. If these things happen, then that's not our responsibility. So again, it all comes back to the clarity of your commitment and your deliverables. Right? What is it that you are going to do and what you're not going to do? And So I think that's getting better, but I mean, ultimately it's better to get the full meal deal, right? And to be protecting them and, whatever legal protection you can get even at that point. Just to, there's so many things coming down the line here that, again, back to the AI elements, right? And what that means for the tools you're using, what it means for, the customers it has. I mean, think about, right, all the internal let's just say, the everyday employee at a company just going out on Gemini or ChatGPT and opening up a network inside. Who's going to take care of that issue?
Yeah. That's the next battlefield.
That is absolutely the next battlefield. I mean, that just thinking, the access, the data, the bots that could come in and out of the company. Ooh, I'm worrisome. That's going to be, and I don't know where. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, but that seems like a big opportunity and a big risk for everybody, from vendors as well as the MSPs and the customers, of course.
It is. Frank, let me ask you this. We're going to close up here in a few minutes, but let me ask you this question, and I'm asking it based on the fact that we've crossed paths a few times. We've not had major conversations, and this is our first real, full sit-down chat. Not, hadn't even done that at a conference or anything else. But as we look at your resume and where you've been and stuff, at what point did security become this big focus for you? Was it before you came to IGI, or was it somewhere along the path? Because you weren't always in the channel like this.
No, I've been in technology since, my first job out of college was selling pistachios for a farmer in Sacramento Valley. So
that's not IT.
I know that's not IT, but soon after that I was. I started working on some technology evaluations and worked for Apple Computer and then for Intel for many years and worked at Cynex. I think security kind of became, and so I was really much more of a hardware guy in general, right? Working with lots of vendors. I love doing alliances and partnerships and sort of, 1 + 1 = 3 kind of scenarios of getting together. The security kind of came front and center maybe 8 to 10 years ago for me, in terms of what I was doing, some consulting projects I had going on, and then coming into IGI and Nodeware, really kind of cemented that in. And it's like, okay, this is a different game. I need to learn this. And, I think I've learned it pretty well. There's always more to learn. And some of the technical terms are out there that keep changing. But, the severity of what needs to be covered in cybersecurity is really it's fascinating for me, and I love being involved in it.
All right. Did you tell Matthew that you were coming on the show?
I hid that from him. I was afraid he might influence me one way or the other. So
no, he's probably going to beg to come on with you or be jealous.
Oh yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, that's the yin and yang show. Yeah, the Frank and Matthew show is a fun one when we're out there together.
All right. So let's end with this forward-looking question and see how far ahead you guys have thought. If we were to, look ahead 12 to 24 months, what do you think we should be paying the closest attention to when it comes to security in our ecosystem?
So, I'll give you two things. One is it comes back to knowing what you have, what you are supposed to be protecting, and what your customer is expecting you to be protecting. Right. That's sort of the first piece. And sort of closely related to that is again, we were just talking about the AI elements, right? What does your customer think about it? What is the customer expecting you to know about it? Right. What are they wanting from you? And what do you kind of need to be delivering? Right. What's the crawl, walk, run? Because nobody's going to start running with this, right? It's absolutely a crawl, walk, run. Because things are changing so fast, right? There's so many new tools and versions of, agentic and agents and all this stuff is just coming so fast that, you got to be nimble, but you also have to be understanding that, when you walk down the hallway at a show and you see everybody's, huge banners, oh, we're AI this, we're AI that. yeah, sort of okay, but that's the normal software. You need to be looking out for those really game changers of a true AI elements and what, how they apply across multiple solutions. That's probably the biggest thing that need to be sort of understood from an MSP is if I've got an agent usage driving some of my first line calls, right? They can, it's not just one application they need to know, right? They need to know all 10 to 20 of your deliverables.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are good things to look ahead for. And we cannot have our head in the sand. That's for sure.
No, let's get that out.
All right, folks. Frank Raimondi, VP of Channel Alliances and Partnerships at IGI Cybersecurity. And we know them as Nodeware. So, Frank, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Uncle Marv. It's been a pleasure to be on it.
Yep, and we'll see you out and about soon. Going to be at PAX8 beyond?
Not be there. Again, by the time this airs, I'll have been at MSP Summit in Vegas, and then doing a Lumify event. And
this is airing tomorrow, so you're way off.
Oh, okay. So if you're at MSP Summit, you listen to this. Look me up. We actually have hosted a happy hour on Monday evening, and a dinner on Tuesday. So we'd love to.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. Love to see you and meet you.
Well, I won't be there. I'll be here at a conference in my hometown. So that's where
you go. Okay.
So,
and you'll provide contact information or?
Absolutely. Yeah. All your information and will be in the show notes, links to your, probably to your website, your LinkedIn, and I've got a Google map to your home. So
just come reach out. Come on. I'm a friendly guy. I'll help you out.
He's got some dinner waiting there for you.
Here you go.
All right, folks. That is going to do it for this episode. If you are still treating cyber hygiene and patching like their background tasks, this is your sign to level up. Frank has given us some good stuff here to think about. Use what you've heard today to tighten up your processes, raise your value, and have better security conversations with your clients. That's going to do it, folks. I'll see you all out there somewhere soon. And until next time, holla.